to the Mega Meeple, the show all about gamers and the games that bring them together. I'm your host, Tom, and I want to thank you for hitting that download button. If you like what you hear, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And while you're there, leave us some kind words and put out some of that 5-star lovin'. And I'll give you a shout out at the next episode. And tell all your friends in your gaming groups about the Mega Meeple. I'd really appreciate it. Get the word out. I'm only one man. I could only do so much. Be sure to connect with me via the Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, etc., 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 yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. You know the ones. And all the links to our social media pages are on the website, www.themegameeple.com. Check out our YouTube channel, where we do some unboxing videos and reviews of games and accessories, as well as some Kickstarter previews. And the link to that is also on our social media page on the website. Alright, enough of the intro. Grab a seat at the gaming table, serve up some chips and dip, grab a Mountain Dew, and let's get on with the show. Welcome back to the Mega Meeple. This is episode 17, and I just want to thank you all again for downloading the episode and spreading the word and letting all your friends and fellow gamers in on the podcast. Share it with them. I appreciate it very much. This episode is going to be a short, rather personal episode for me. This past week on quartz.com, and I shared this on my Facebook page that you could go to and like on the social media page on our website, by Annalise Griffin. She wrote an article called "Playing Board Games Can Make You a Nicer Person with Better Relationships." And in the beginning of the article, she talks about how she found out about Gen Con, and she went to Gen Con 50, which evidently was her first time there, and talking about just what her first impressions of Gen Con and the people there. But in the article, she says, quote, "Board games, along with role-playing and table games like Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, allow players to enter into a controlled state of conflict. The process of engaging in that conflict is fun even when you lose, and the outcome is likely to be different the next time around. A good board game builds in enough chance so that any reasonably skilled player can win. In all of these ways, board games release players, however temporarily, from the maxim that life is divided into clear, consistent categories of winners and losers, and that there is a moral logic as to who falls into which category. Another significant feature of board games is that they require several people to sit down in the same room together and concentrate on shared experience in real time. That is becoming increasingly rare in a world in which we often see our friends and loved ones more on social media than in real life. A recent Atlantic story outlined the sharp rise in teen isolation as an entire generation sits in their rooms, glued to their smartphones, interacting via apps. They report higher levels of depression and anxiety than earlier generations. Then she says, in a society where the most common answer to the question, how many confidants do you have, is 0, it's clear that a lot of people are hungry for connection and civilized conversation. Inviting the neighbors over for game night is a good place to start. And again, I'll put a link to that article in the show notes for this episode. Now, I'm going to share with you how I got involved in board games, or just gaming in general. Now, when I was a kid, I was primarily in video games. I grew up in the generation of the Atari 2600, and I remember in high school, me and my best friend, we would have weekly tournaments with each other, where one week I would go over his place, the next week he would come over my house, and we would play Space Invaders on our Atari systems and try to beat each other's high scores. Then later in life, I just on impulse buy, I got a PlayStation 1, back when those were out and the thing. I think I went as far as staying with the video games and still until PlayStation 3. And then from there, I just kind of fell away from it. You know, life happens as it is. And growing up, my exposure to board games was what a lot of people have grown up with. A lot of your average, quote, people have grown up with is, you know, Risk, Monopoly, Scrabble, you know, whatever. I knew of people who played Magic and D&D. At the time, I was with a group of people that kept saying that things like Magic and D&D was satanic and it was a portal to hell. And what I found in my later years, and most recently years, is that's a bunch of bullcrap. As I left that particular lifestyle and adopted reason and logic rather than superstition and rituals. But this writer at quartz.com comes up she made quite a few valid points. When you're able to meet with friends around a table in the same room at the same time, face to face, and be able to go on an adventure together, not only does it give you some reprieve from the bullcrap that is reality, especially with the type of world and reality that this world is in right now, and just give you just a break to be able to shut the brain down a bit, or at least divert the brain into a more fun and satisfying and fulfilling engagement. And you build memories together. I've always said on this podcast that gaming is a social activity. And you'll find out by the end of this episode why I feel that so strongly. It's like going to a movie. It's an escape from the world outside. It's an escape from whatever problems you have. It's an escape from the demons that nag you at night. And for the most part, gaming is very inclusive. I have encountered groups of gamers that have been very cliquish, and they don't want you to be part of their group, or they don't want you, if you're a newbie, especially if you're a newbie, holy hell, it's like they don't have the time for you. But that's the exception. That's not the rule. Overall, the majority of gamers that I have met have been very welcoming, very encouraging, very open to bring you into their group. And if you don't know something, they'll teach you. They'll teach you how to play. They'll teach you the rules. They'll give you options about, okay, in this particular situation, you can do this, or you could do that, or you could do this here. They're very welcome and very helpful in teaching you and helping you learn the game, or whatever game system, or whatever RPG system that they're playing in. You meet very few, I'm going to call them a-holes because this is a family-friendly podcast. You come across very few a-holes in gaming. By and large, the vast majority of people are very friendly and welcoming, particularly to strangers and newcomers. Because let's face it, as I said, gaming is a social activity. If you're an a-hole, chances are you're not going to have a group to be able to game with for very much longer, because word's going to get around and they're going to have the reputation of being an a-hole and someone that you want to avoid. So if you go into gaming being an a-hole, chances are you're not going to last very long, because you are going to be blacklisted. But I say all that to tell you this. I'm going to share with you how I got into gaming. And this was about 2.5 years ago. I haven't been involved in gaming for that long. But once I did get involved in gaming, it was something that I found brought me a lot of happiness, a lot of fulfillment, and I'm very passionate about that. You may not hear that by my voice, but that's because I'm just a really chilled, laid-back person. I don't get very animated and really excited. Okay, I'm not like that. Trust me, I'm excited and passionate about it, all right? Now, I'm going to give you a trigger warning right now that what I'm about to tell you, I'm not going to get into graphic detail, but it does touch upon some sensitive things such as depression, anxiety, suicide, that type of thing. So if someone talking about that turns you off, then turn off this podcast. Thank you for listening. I promise that the next episode will be much more happy and won't discuss anything like that. But this story does have a happy ending because I'm still here. Okay, so there's your trigger warning. You've been warned. How did I get back? How did I get involved at gaming? A little bit of prehistory of what led up to it. I'd just graduated from college. I went back. I changed my career. I went back, got a degree in computer science, and specialized in network security and hacking, what's called ethical hacking or penetration testing, and worked at a number of places, just basically paying my dues, working help desks and stuff like that. I had a job offer out in Oklahoma that I went to. I pretty much packed up everything and moved out to Oklahoma. Was there for about 7 months, and unfortunately that's when the Moore, Oklahoma tornado occurred, and I was about a 10-minute drive from where that was. And I remember telling my employer, I was like, I really appreciate the opportunity. I enjoyed staying here, but I can't do this tornado stuff. I'm sorry. I'd rather take a hurricane in the Carolinas than a tornado in the Oklahoma. I came back to the Carolinas and started looking for work. A friend of mine that I knew for a number of years allowed me to stay in their guest bedroom until I was able to get work, and then start to look for a place of my own. After a brief few months, I think 3 or 4 months, I did land a job. It was my dream job, doing the very thing that I went to college for and got specially trained for, with some additional training and certifications. It was with network security, computer, anti-hacking type stuff. And it was a job and an employer that required me to go through the government security clearance. Started the ball rolling. I had gotten fingerprinted. I was sent into the FBI. I got the loads and loads of paperwork filled out and contacted. Was able to go back and list people that have known me for the past umpteen years. So anyway, got that filed in and was ready to get that process started. Not even 2 weeks. This is in January. So it was cold, snow. About 10 days after I started that job, I got sick. I think I only called off 1 day sick. But the other days I was pulling my butt out of bed, and no matter how crappy I felt, I was going in there because I was not going to screw up this job or my chances to do what I've dreamed of doing. And since it was middle of January, I'm thinking, okay, well, it's, I have a cold, or sinus infection, something like that. It's just basically a cold, because that's about the time that I usually get a cold. So I didn't think much of it. I didn't bother going to a doctor. I just played, Dr. Tom, and prescribed myself some over-the-counter medicines, and that's the way I was dealing with it. I think it was about the third day that I was sick. I remember it was a Saturday. The family that I was staying with was home. I was in the guest bedroom sick. I think I'd gotten up to go to the kitchen to get something to drink, and I never made it. I got about halfway to the kitchen, and then my body just went out. I passed out. Now, to this day, I vaguely remember the family that I was staying with taking me to the hospital. It sounded like my lungs was filled with liquid, or fluid, and they were taking me down to get some x-rays to find out just the extent of it. And then that was the last thing I remember. The next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital. I can't walk. I can't feel my legs. My right arm, I can't feel my right arm. I am so weak that I can't even sit up in bed. My left hand is numb. My lips feel like they're really parched, and my mouth is dry as a damn desert. I was so thirsty, and I had a tube sticking out of my neck. And the doctor or somebody came in, was asking me, do you know your name? What's your name? Do you know where you are? Do you know what date it is? And I got the first two right. I got my name right. It was pretty obvious to me that I was at the hospital. I couldn't remember the name of the hospital. I think I said some other name of the hospital. She said, well, no, it's this one. But yes, you are in a hospital. But when they asked me if I knew what today's date was, I got that wrong. I was thinking that it was like February 2nd or something like that, because I think that was like the weekend that I remember that I passed out. So I'm thinking, well, okay, they took me to the ER. I passed out, I slept, and it's the next day. So I think I told them like the first weekend in February. And they said, no, it's the middle of March. So evidently I was in a coma for 38 days. And I found out later from the doctors that I didn't have the cold. I had, not only did I have the flu, but I had pneumonia as well. And my body just shut down. And I basically lost everything. The job was gone. The family that I was staying with disappeared. They had actually moved from the house. I have no idea where they moved to, but they just took the stuff and just moved out and disappeared. I've never heard from them since. And I literally just lost everything. The only thing I had to my name was what my friend was able to go over to the house where I was staying at the time that I fell out and box some of my stuff. And that's all I had. It was the stuff I had in boxes that he was able to get out of the house, I guess before this family up and moved and disappeared. So I spent the next year through therapy, learning how to walk all over again. After that, I was then discharged and I went to a homeless shelter. And that was an experience and a half. And then around that time, I think maybe a little bit earlier, I think it was when I was at the nursing home. And I'm not going to get into all the minute details. I'm just going to hit the high points of what I need to tell you in order to make this point. Met a group of people. Now, bear in mind, this is like a good 2 years after me waking up from the coma. And I'm still waiting for Social Security to even schedule a hearing to hear my case of disability. So I was already at a dark place at that time, and it just got darker. And I remember that began the season that I really, really seriously was so depressed that I seriously considered suicide. I often thought up to then that I was better off if I died in that coma. It would have been a lot easier, not only for me and a lot of other people, that I just didn't want to be here anymore. And I remember walking to the store one day. It was on the side of a very busy street, and I was all by myself. And I remember thinking, you know what? I could walk out in front of this Mack truck coming at me at 60, 65, 75 miles an hour at the last minute, and there's nobody that could stop me. I was that close to just saying, F it, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. It was about that time that another couple that I know, I knew the husband, at that time I knew the husband more than the wife, but they had contacted me and said, well, we might be able to work something out. We might have something for you. They basically invited me to come and stay with them in their daughter's old bedroom for as long as needed. And I did. And for a good portion at the beginning of my stay there, I pretty much stayed in that room. I didn't. I put my headphones on. I would watch videos on my computer with headphones on, and I just stayed in that room. I didn't want to come out. I didn't want to be bothered with anybody. I didn't want to do anything. That's when the depression became acute, because by that time it was a good. It wasn't like a quote unquote depression where, oh, I just don't feel good today. Well, I'm down today. Oh, I'm feeling kind of, my mood's kind of down today. No, it was a constant depression during that time. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be involved in life. And by this point, I had already started seeing a therapist on a weekly basis and going to there. Here's the plot twist. Here's how I got involved in gaming. The couple that I was staying with at that time both of them were into gaming, which I thought was kind of unusual, because usually the people that I've known that is in gaming, it's usually the guys. It's the husband. And if they're married, it's the husband's involved in gaming and the wife is like, you ain't bringing this crap into this house. You go out and, meet with your friends somewhere else. You don't bring that in here. Or if they did bring it in here, they had one room that was dedicated, like the man cave, that was dedicated to the guy's stuff, his gaming thing. And it's like, you don't bring all the gaming stuff, you don't bring that into other parts of the house. The wife was like, no, you keep all that stuff in there. But it was cool because this couple, it was both the wife and the husband that was involved in gaming. And they both had equal amount of board games and RPGs books and stuff like that to both of their names. So anyway, I don't know what prompted it. I guess they were a bit concerned that I was spending so much time alone in the room. But the husband invited me to come out. He was having some people over because he was going through a RPG scenario that he was wanting to test out for a upcoming con that he was GMing for. And he invited me to, come out and play with them. And I think at that point, I knew that I had to do something. I had to take control and do something before I go any farther down this slippery slope. Now, for those of you who have known me for a long time, both prior and post of the coma, because that seems to be a central point of where things really changed for me. The common denominator of my personality and my temperament is that I'm a fighter. So deep down in the back of my mind, even in the midst of the depression and the suicidal thoughts and the isolation that I felt, I knew that I had to do something. I had to make a change, or things were not going to get any better. So I said, yeah, sure, okay. I don't have anything else planned. Okay. If you guys don't mind teaching me how to play. And so that's what I did that night. I actually came out of my room, and we sat around the dining room table and met a bunch of people. And those people have, from that time, is now, good friends of mine now. And we played a game scenario with Savage Worlds. So that was my introduction to both gaming and RPGs. And then later on, the con that the husband was testing this scenario for, he had bought me a one-day pass to this con. He says, well, would you be interested in coming? If you do, we got a ticket for you for Saturday. It was a 3-day con, but first of all, he thought that maybe if I went to it, I would be overwhelmed and not like it. But I think the wife kind of said, well, hey, he needs to get the hell out of that room and do something. Get out and mingle and meet people in the world and do stuff. And so, but I went one day to this con, and I had a blast. And that's pretty much when I was introduced to board games. And fast forward to now Number one, my government benefits and disability was approved, so I was able to get a place of my own, sort of on my own. I mean, ideally, I would like to just be on my own with, just me and my cat, whatever. But because of the physical limitations and disabilities that I have as a result of that coma, I thought it would be best to, have a roommate. So a mutual friend of mine and of the couple I was staying with, my friend asked me, hey, would you want a room with me at this new apartment? And this friend is also into gaming. In fact, that's how I met him, is through the husband's gaming group. So considering my physical limitations and mobility, I thought it would be wiser to live with somebody, or at least have a roommate that's aware of those things and could be there in case something happened with me. Because at this point, it's been about 3 years since I woke up from the coma. I'm still dealing with the residual effects of what my body went through during those 6 weeks. I'm having issues with my heart, my liver, my kidneys, the whole shebang. But I'm still going. So I'm rooming with a good friend of mine who's into gaming. His girlfriend is also into gaming. We have a dedicated room in the apartment for gaming. And we have people over, just like when I was staying with that couple for a while. They had people over. I would invite people over that I met of games that I wanted to try out. If you listen to one of my previous episodes, I talk about my very first time GMing for this particular group. But if it wasn't for that couple, and I'm gonna call them, I'm not gonna use their last name, but because it is a public forum here, but they listen to the episodes and the podcast, so they know who they are. But if it wasn't for Richard and Karen inviting me to come out of my room and actually interact with other people, and be not only give other people a chance to know me and accept me and be my friend, but also give myself a chance to put myself out there after I've lost so much. And I'm not even talking about material stuff. I've lost so much as far as family, as far as friends, people I thought were my friends, and I felt useless. But it wasn't for them inviting me to come out of my room and do something fun. And they used gaming. Gaming was the mechanism that was used to really help save my life. And I could honestly, truly say that if it wasn't for them and their love for gaming and their availability and their willingness and them being welcoming to me to include me into that hobby, I would still, if I wasn't going to be dead, I would still be wanting to lock myself up in my room and not bother with people, not bother with the world, just not live. So that's why I am so passionate about gaming, because it has been used as a catalyst to help get me out of a deep depression, get me away from feeling isolating myself, feeling suicidal, feeling useless. Because of gaming, and more importantly, more specifically, the people involved in gaming and their welcomeness and their relationships and their friendship and their encouragement. It's stuff like that and people like that was vital in me wanting to live again, me wanting to stay alive. And those friends and those relationships and those connections helped save my life. And now I'm not independent. I'm not living on my own because of, like I said before, the physical limitations that I have. It's more wise to have a roommate that's able to look out to see if to be there if anything happened to me. But it's because of people like Richard and Karen and my friend and roommate Matt and all the people that I have met and friends I have made through them via gaming and RPGs. It's the connection that I have with those people that have strengthened me and kept me going and prevented me from jumping or walking out in front of that Mack truck. So I just want to say publicly to all of them that are listening, and even all you out there across the world that are listening to these podcasts, all I could say is thank you. You guys helped save my life. And now when I get down or depressed, or I start to feel myself slipping down to a dark place, it's because of my connection and relationship and friendship with these people that gives me strength and gives me a fire in my belly, in a sense, to want to fight that. Because not only do I owe it to myself to fight to stay alive, but I owe it to the people that love me to fight to stay alive during those times that the other option starts to feel appealing. So thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you guys. Well, actually, I do know what I'd do without you guys. But I didn't, and I'm still here. So that's why I am so passionate about gaming. Well, that's it for this episode. I promise the next episode is going to be filled with nothing but happy thoughts. Yeah, but yeah, this story does have a happy ending, obviously, because I'm still here. I haven't done myself in yet, and I don't intend to. When I read that article, I just caused me to reflect back on what I've been through the past 3.5 years, and the people who have risen up and stepped up to bat and helped me during that very difficult and dark season. For those of you who, if you get to a time in your life where you're going through tough times, you're in a dark place, thinking very dark things, I'm here to tell you, I've been there. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're feeling. It's not fun. But I encourage you to do what you need to do to step out, because I could tell you from experience that, yeah, and it's scary. Yes, it's scary to put yourself out there, especially when you've been rejected and shunned by so many people. It's hard to trust, but I encourage you that there are people that are available and willing to welcome you into their circles, welcome you into their life, and be a real legitimate friend. You just have to come out of your room and give them a chance to do that. And if you need to, I encourage you to seek professional help. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's a very strong and there's a lot of courage that's involved in asking for help. Well, that's it for this episode, because I'm really not sure what else to say. So to all my listeners and all my followers, and especially all my friends in the gaming world that I have met and grown to love and be able to call friends and be able to be called a friend, thank you very much. I owe you guys a lot. So until next time, this is Tom saying, game on.